Welcome to Beyond the Wild podcast, where we go venturing beyond the gear, beyond the subject, beyond the shot, to find the heart of wildlife and adventure creative. Beyond the Wild podcast is brought to you by pictureline.com, your online source for everything photography, and Canon USA. Listen in, we share tips and tactics learned from years of journeying into the wild. Your hosts are Jason Loftus, Ron Hayes, and myself, Mark Raycroft. Let's begin another episode of Beyond the Wild. It's live, recording for real. Deirdre Rosenberg, welcome to the podcast. We're excited to have you on. Jason Loftus and I are here tonight. And I guess so many questions looking at your wonderful content. But I have one. I've been following you on social media and your photography and your adventures for years. And I was naive at the beginning because your name on Instagram is Deirdre Denali, right? Deirdre Denali Photography.
Yep.
So hey, I'm doing the shout out. I'm wearing a Denali t-shirt tonight. But I'm curious because that's not your name. So is it a spin because you heart Denali, or is there another reason for the Instagram handle?
So that actually is my name.
Okay.
So my name is Deirdre Denali Rosenberg, and I like my really tight knit circle calls me Dee Dee. And so I grew up in a mountaineering family and named after the mountain.
Wow.
And so that is my real name.
That's really cool.
It's the best answer. I'm so envious. Mom, I know you listen to these podcasts. I mean, I guess when I was born, you didn't know about Denali, unfortunately, like Deirdre's family, but how cool would that have been? I mean, I have my dad's name as my middle name, so I have to appreciate that shout out, but could have added two, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, our daughter has two middle names. Denali as a middle name. Life is good.
It's not too bad, is it?
Yeah, that's awesome. Very, very, very cool. So you grew up, well, talk about, you were mentioning that as far as, and on your wonderful website, which I encourage people to go to, which I believe is yourname.com, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep,
So,
DeirdreDenaliPhotography.com.
So the same as with the Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It mentions that you grew up in northern Minnesota. I love I love Denali area too, but I love I've been to northern Minnesota multiple times. It's such a wonderful wilderness area. Whereabouts and what was that like?
So I grew up in Grand Marais, which is right next to Lake Superior. It's right on the lake. And then on the other side, that is like the west side, is the Boundary Water Canoe Area Wilderness, which really is where I kind of cut my teeth, I guess, so to say, when it comes to all things wilderness and outdoors. Some of my earliest memories are out canoeing and portaging and hearing wolves and all that kind of stuff. So if you can't tell by my accent, you can certainly tell by all of my like early memory stories because they're so shaped from growing up there.
Northern Minnesota is a wonderful pace of life. I mean, it's wilderness is everywhere from my experience there, right? And people are surrounded by it, and there are wolves, there are bears. It's a wonderful place. And the Boundary Waters Canoe Area and it sisters on to an international peace park with Canada, with Quetico. And wilderness area is renowned for anybody in that region. I have friends in Wisconsin that take their kids annually to the Boundary Waters and just escape for a week. It's like my pilgrimages to Algonquin Park because it's closer here, but a similar type of water, multiple lake forest landscape that's magical. So I can I feel it.
Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Yeah, it was absolutely a dreamy place. And at the time, this is when it wasn't, I think it's gotten like a little bit busier in the past decade or so, a little bit more well known. And I mean, back growing up, it was like just you in the wilds. Now, I mean, you could certainly go out 20 miles into the wilderness and have that, but it used to just be that way anywhere that you would go. And I really kind of was given the freedom from the time I can remember, the time I was like 4, to kind of go off and just be. And so, yeah, I mean, it was just spectacular, just a beautiful place to grow up, and a sense of freedom that I think, much to my parents' dismay sometimes, I like carried through all of my life.
It's fantastic. I think, that's, I mean, there's some level of risk, but there's also, it fills a person's spirit, their personality. That's how, I mean, there could be so many memes about you, reflecting on growing up with that freedom, right? When I know
Yeah.
I'm a little bit older, but my parents didn't expect me home until it was dark, and they didn't know where I was, what I was doing,
Yep.
going out, and that's even more so, if you're going into the wilderness, and how magical, and it explains so much. I mean, there's something on your website that you state that you love that resonates with me. And I admit I don't do it as often as I should, but Algonquin trips and the portages and stuff like that kind of fit in the mold of type 2 fun. And
Yeah.
you love type 2 fun. What, for the
Yes.
benefit of listeners that might not know, what is type 2 fun?
Oh, it's the worst time. It's when you go out and you just have a big suffer fest. And I mean, I don't know if I can swear, but like shit hits the fan. And it's up to you to survive and make this the best situation it can be. And it's the worst. But when you come home from it and you unpack it all and you look at your photos and your videos, it was the most beautiful, astounding, life changing, grand adventure that there's ever been in the whole world. And there's nothing like type 2 fun. It is the best.
Right. So if you were portaging, 3 miles in the rain with mosquitoes, that qualifies.
Oh,
Getting
yeah.
rid of, yeah. Okay. Okay. Good.
Oh, yeah.
So spinning on that, I just want to give a quick shout out. One of the podcasts that I actually subscribe to is called the Dirtbag Diaries. I've loved it for
Yes.
years, and Type 2
Awesome.
Fun is what they're about. So you're familiar?
Love it.
Good. Good. Yeah. It's I mean, even just their intro song is, when I hear that, I just chill out a degree. Everything just said. I just love, and their stories, and the interviews they do with their guests. It's a great
Yep.
podcast. Not photography based, type 2 fun based. Did you just
Absolutely.
the one with the donkey races a couple of years
Yes.
ago? Oh, it's
Yes.
so, because you have to work with the ass, the donkey, to do the run over the distance, but you can't force the donkey. Has its own, motivation, or not, right? That was a great episode. I love that one. And another favorite, I'll stop on this in a second. Another favorite was the one where any type of watercraft, and they go up the West Coast, like all the way to Alaska,
Oh, yeah.
right? And a gentleman, I think, did it on a stand-up paddleboard, right?
So, can you even imagine? Have you been on a stand-up paddleboard? Oh,
No,
it's the
my
worst.
kids
I
have, but I
hate it
have.
so much.
Oh, really?
It's
Oh,
not easy.
no, it's not easy. And just like inflating them to the right amount is not easy. Those things are like, they're not my favorite things. That would be like really like crucial type 2 fun for me. I don't love it.
And yeah, the distance, I just can't wrap my head around that. But
No.
but the fact that people do this in all different types of boats or flotation devices, and do this trek, is super cool. It's human spirit, right? I mean, just it's something outside the box. People do it. They come together as a community, support one another, and celebrate the effort of this type 2 fun, and see stuff all along that way, right? Whales and weather and
Yep.
you name it, right? It's very cool. I'm having so much fun already. So, how did you get into photography? I mean,
Oh
you're a
man.
wonderful conservation photographer. I put that out there, but we'll come back to that. But what was your start in photography?
So when my parents would just kind of shoo me out the door to go do whatever I would do, I was always given a camera. I never ever didn't have a camera that I can remember in my whole entire life. My dad was a professional photographer. Um, he actually, he actually was around for a lot of really amazing moments. But
What's your dad's first name?
James,
James. Okay. Okay.
I don't know that anyone would know him, but
All right.
he was a nature photographer, and it's just something that was instilled in me kind of my whole entire life, that like we all see the world so different, and it's important for you to capture that so that we can see your world and we can kind of understand how you process things. It was like a real way that I was taught to communicate. I am actually autistic, and I think that my parents saw from a really early age with me that I was able to communicate how I was feeling or thinking better through different forms of communication than verbal language. And so, camera in hand, I was able to kind of do what I needed to do with all that.
That's
So
wonderful.
from an early age, it was you just had a camera, and it's
Yeah.
just a way of communication for you, and you've just carried it with you.
Yeah, my very first camera was like I bought one off eBay because I wanted to like see if I could remember what it felt like. It was just a blue plastic Fisher Price film camera. And then when I was like 5, I got a old Minolta from my dad. So yeah, always had a camera.
At 5, you got Minolta. That's
Yeah.
amazing. I love
Yeah,
it.
so I people always assume that I am too young to remember film, but I grew up in a house with a dark room and all that kind of stuff. So always have been a photographer, just different levels of profession, I guess.
And what's the view we're looking at for those watching on YouTube? Just out of
Oh,
curiosity.
so this is my like front yard. Um, this, but I have
That's
stuff going on inside my
just
house,
saying.
and so I was like, outside will be better. Um,
Terrible view. Terrible.
So our house sits up on a foothill in the foothills of the San Juan Mountains. And so down below, it all is lighting up currently. It's a little San Juan River Valley basin. Uh, and yeah, it's just spectacular. We don't ever really get tired of it. But sometimes you take it for granted, so it's home.
It's beautiful. Yeah, very nice. It's fun to do a podcast. I mean, I love it when we're all outdoors, but to have somebody on the show outdoors is a different spin. So that's cool.
Jealous, I have to be honest. I need to set up an outside studio for myself.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's not too shabby.
No.
I was joking with Deirdre before the show that it's dark here and it's wonderful evening there. It's just starting to get golden hour.
Mhm.
Envious. Very nice. So in Minnesota growing up, you had the Minolta, and when did it become more? I mean, it was a wonderful means of expression for you, but when did you decide to branch out and become more serious about your application, and where did that take you?
So that's an interesting question. I really didn't think about it too much until I was maybe about 22. I was always the friend with a camera. I was always the person with a camera, kind of for no reason, just like sneaking cameras all over the place. Um, and then I got into like trail running and rock climbing and all that kind of stuff. And so I started becoming like an action sports photographer, a mountain sports photographer. And that's when I kind of got a little bit more serious. And then I was invited to be a photographer down at the GoPro Games in Vail, Colorado. And that was when I was maybe like 28. And that's when I was like, oh, like I could do this. And so that's kind of when I actually pushed into like, this is what I'm gonna for sure do. Before that, I wanted to be a writer. And so once I started doing more mountain sports photography, I just was like, I don't want to do this. I want to focus on the nature of it all. Like, I love the places I'm working, and I love what's going on behind the sports that I'm seeing. And that's kind of what got my foot in the door to doing what I do now, which is more of the wildlife and nature and landscapes.
What made you switch to do that instead of pursuing the action sports all the time, given that you had that experience?
I had about 8 to 5 years of health scares and near-death experiences. And I decided just that I didn't know how much time I actually had. And it like lit this fire in me that I had one life, and it never kind of calmed down, that fire that lit. And it was kind of like, I don't even care if I make money at this point. Like, I just want to live, and I just want to do what I want to do. And I don't want people to control what I'm doing because of financial reasons or because of this or that. And so at that point, my life just kind of became like, I'm going to do what I'm going to do, and it's going to work or it's going to fail, but I'm going to fail no matter what if I don't try. And I mean, after almost dying a few times, it's like amazing how simple that choice becomes, where it's just like, okay, like, cool, I could maybe not wake up tomorrow, so I'll be super glad that I saw those birds. And it just, I met my husband, and he fully understood like what I was going for with that. We met kind of at the crux of that decision happening for me. And so it just all kind of culminated in this really perfect serendipitous way.
It's really moving, and that's wonderful. I mean, so many people, so much of our lives is consumed by bills and work and choices that aren't what might be our preferred choices. And it's unfortunate if it takes those critical experiences. But I mean, I love hearing that you're doing it because it's what you want and it's your passion, and then that would speak volumes. The energy behind it, the creativity, all of it, right, is so naturally filled. So, yeah, wow, that's fantastic.
Yeah, I didn't know that. That's pretty incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, it.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, it was an interesting time. I used to talk about it all a lot more. It's with the gift of distance. It's stuff that I feel like so much of my audience knows, but then at the same time, so much of my audience doesn't know because I don't talk about it as much. But there was a time in my life when I weighed over 300 pounds, and that culminated into a really big cancer scare, which then turned into like this crazy infection, which turned into full sepsis and kidney failure and a lot more than just that. And some things happened like C. diff, where at the time there wasn't treatment for that. And so it's just all these things happened, and it was just like, okay, like I'm like piecing out of whatever regular life is because I just can't do it anymore. And I always say, like, my motto now is leap and a net will appear. Because I mean, you have to trust yourself. You have to go for it. If you don't go for it, what's even the point?
That's great. What a great perspective. Yeah, I mean, holy cow. Hopefully everybody listening is taking this in, because sometimes we all have to learn those lessons, or those, gain those experiences to teach us those things. And, so hopefully some of us can try to, maybe take some of that to heart and not have to experience those things to learn those lessons. You know what I mean? But But I'm super happy for her. I had no idea. I did not know. I've been following you for a long time, and I did not know that it was that kind of a scenario for you. So, first of all, kudos to you. That's a very touching story, and I'm super happy that you came out on the other side, living your best life, literally. I mean, I can tell you are. So.
Yeah. Yeah. I learned how to put happiness first. Still trying to find a little bit of balance in that, but generally life is good, and it's hard to complain too much about anything because here I am.
You don't complain much. I mean, we were kind of talking about this a little bit before we started, and I might be jumping the gun a little bit here, but I love watching your stories. And for anybody that's not following Deirdre, I got it right.
You did get it right.
For anybody who's not following Deirdre, you really should. It's her excitement and energy for life is just contagious. And I love when she does her level or type 2 trips. She does them quite often. And I love following along with her stories and seeing the images that come from it. And you do talk quite often about your mental state, where you're at, and then it's always comes back to here we go. It's let's just you get into happy mode, so to speak, right? So
Yep.
I'm always super impressed. And the other thing I really am impressed with, just as a side note, is I love how much you appreciate all the little things. Like, I don't know very many people that sit there, take in things, and appreciate literally the little things, like the little critters, the butterflies, the pika, I could just go on and on. And when everybody else is looking at the big things and the grand landscape, you're down there looking at the details and enjoying those moments and experiences. So I just great, big kudos to you. And you've actually taught me quite a bit about, how to slow down a little bit and how to pay attention to those things. So
That's awesome. That's honestly like the biggest compliment. All I ever want to do is share my nature with people, because I feel like if people just can pause and just slow down a little bit, it's astounding how many things you can look at and experience and sense with all your senses. I know so many people think that I have these like real crazy moments where, like, can you believe this happened? And it's just kind of like, if you just slow down, if you just stop moving just for a second, it's amazing what can happen. So I really appreciate you saying that.
absolutely. It's funny. People think you have all these amazing moments, and you do, but so could everybody else. Like, those amazing moments, a lot of people just bypass them or aren't paying attention. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. Totally.
Yeah.
I have like the quickest little story to say about that.
Yeah.
So I went to Costa Rica a couple months ago, and this was my first time out of the country, and I had the most exciting plans, and I was going to do no guides whatsoever, and I was going to find sloths in the wild. And so I did, and me and my husband were in the pouring rain looking up at a tree, seeing a sloth not 10 feet away from us. And I swear to God, like 10 people walked past us and didn't even look up to see the sloth. And they were talking to themselves like, I wonder if we're going to see a sloth today. Like, I hope we see a sloth today. And it's just like, you are not even looking for a sloth. You're not even slowing down. You're not even looking in a tree where they live. Like, people just need to slow down a little bit, because it's amazing what's happening all around us.
That's a great story.
There's so many things I want to ask you. And I want to say quickly, this is one of the reasons I love podcasting, is meeting people with the type of energy that you have, and the appreciation and perspective. So I'm right out of the gate. Thanks for being on.
Oh, thank you.
The coolest little mammal rodents out there. I have a good friend in Alberta who just so passionate about them too, and I know I see them a lot on your feed. The little rock hoppers. Let me ask you the question. It comes up in so many conversations when these cute little animals come up. Pika, Pika.
Pika. I'm a Pika.
You're a
I'll
Pika.
Pika all the time. Yeah.
Okay. Well, Jamie, so is my friend. You might know him on Instagram. I know Jamie B. Wild on Instagram. He's all, yeah. So when we're in the field talking, it's Pika, and we have the conversation because in my whole life as a biologist, I've been calling them Pika. So
Mhm.
you're going with Pika.
I'm
Cool.
going with Pika.
It's
Yeah.
simple.
Well,
It's
you've
simple.
spent far more time with them than I have. So
Yeah.
what is it about Pika that you love?
Oh man, so I grew up in northern Minnesota, but I spent about half of my time in the Rocky Mountains, just because of my parents doing expeditions and that sort of thing. And so I would oftentimes get left on the alpine tundra just to like have at it while they were summiting mountains or whatever. And so from my earliest memories too, like I'm just hanging out with Pikas. And I mean, I think recently, right, they've gotten like a good like PR agent or something because they've started to become like more popular with people and people know what they are. But that wasn't always the case, really. And so I really got into telling their stories and kind of photographing them and being around them just kind of as a means to be like, do you guys know that these animals are here? Like they're so cool. Um,
You've seen them.
oh,
You'd have seen
oh,
them.
they're unbelievable. And I feel like they're one of those animals where because they're so cute, people don't necessarily understand how badass they are.
Mm.
And how like meant for survival and ancient they are, how well evolved they are. I mean, they're up in these extremes with like these animals that people are just like, these are like the toughest animals on the planet, and like going on and on about. And then there's these little pikas that are like much older when it comes to like time on this planet, and they're just doing their thing, just looking super cute and living their lives. So I just love them. I have dedicated a good portion of my career to studying them. Um, One of my favorite projects that I've been working on forever is that I'm trying to find all of the like quote unquote like unfound Pika colonies of the San Juan Mountains, to kind of show that they don't just live in the alpine, they don't just live in the subalpine, they like live kind of all over the place and they're popping up in places people don't expect. And so yeah, they're really cool animals. I love them.
You know what's cool is it's funny you said that. So we have here in Utah we have them as well. I mean they're all over the West. I think if you're at the right elevation, the right kind of situation. But again, it's that paying attention. And fortunately for me, I found Pika. I found Pika pretty early on in my photography career through a friend, and I just was baffled. And they're kind of tough to photograph, especially if you don't understand. You just kind of got to hang out with them and let them get used to you. And then
Yep.
if you do that, they're very curious little animals, and they're kind of like will give you a look and that every now and then. Their little squawks are they just crack me up. But that's how I found some one time here locally. Just hear that, yeah. I actually was like photographing moose, and I heard that, and I was like, "Whoa, wait a minute! There's Pika
Yeah.
around here." So I went and looked for them and found them and photographed them. But yeah, I had no idea they were in that area. So, but
Yep.
yeah, that's a cool story, and that's cool that you've dedicated so much time. Give us a little bit more of a, if you don't mind. I'm curious, for my own benefit, for my own selfishness, but give us a little bit more of a history lesson on them. I mean, what you mentioned a little bit how ancient they are, and that what about them is so incredible. I mean, they are incredible, but give us more details if you don't mind. But
So, and I'm going to get a lot of this wrong because I haven't been like in this world for like nearly a year. But when it was like the Bering Land Bridge or Pangea, like that, all the like geological things that have happened with this planet, they basically came here from like Russia and China. And so that is where the pronunciation Pika comes from, that's the way that like the native tribes from those places pronounced it, from what I've gathered. um and so yeah, they're basically meant to survive in these extremely brutal landscapes and biomes. They are absolute little survivors. So they are complicated though, because while they gain a lot of fat, which you can see, and they have a dark black undercoat to absorb the sun, they oftentimes now are freezing to death because they require snow to insulate them in the winter. And with climate change, we're not seeing that same amount of snow. And so a lot of people think like, oh, like they love the cold, they love all that there is with the alpine. And that's true in the summer, but in winter they really rely on that snowpack to keep them insulated under the snow. And then in summer, of course, it's really harsh. They do super bad in temperatures above about 70 degrees Fahrenheit. And actually, in recent years, I've been finding a lot of deceased Pika. And I think that's largely because of temperatures, because they're just kind of out in the open dead where there would be no reason for them to be except for overheating and not being able to handle what their environments are. So something else really fun, people think that all they do is like the really loud squeaks that you can hear. And that's kind of why they're famous. But if you spend a lot of time around them, they have probably about 50 vocalizations that they do. It's really, really easy to tell the difference between adults and babies, by their voices. They chat, kind of anything that if you spend a lot of time around like snowshoe hares or that kind of animal, they're real similar. And so a lot of those behaviors and vocalizations translate into Pika. And so while they seem just like this precious and sweet little animal, they're actually really complex, and their dynamics and like group structures are super interesting. They're not very social animals, but they live really socially. And so as you can imagine, that like creates a lot of tension in the Pika colonies. So I always, whenever I'm like, I have these different Pika colonies I regularly study, and each one has its own dynamics and different personalities as a group and as individuals. They can live up to 10 years, and so you do actually get to know individuals. So yeah, I could talk about them forever, and that was probably really rambly. But I hope that I answered some of your question.
Absolutely, you did.
So cool thing about them, and that call I did was like an alarm call, right? When something startles one of them and they're warning their neighbors something's up.
Yep.
There's a weasel around, or there's a raptor or something. But do they always live like where I'm used to seeing them in Alaska or in Alberta? They're in rock slides and they've got all these access points into the burrows, which is really cool. So my first question is, are they always in kind of a scree situation like that? And the other thing is, because of that, it's quite interesting because they have to leave that to collect all the grass and forage that they take back and then to drink too. So they have to multiple times a day do a run that's very risky for forage and drink, I assume, right? I mean, it'd be a tough go. They're fast, but they need to be.
Yeah. Yep. So to answer your first question, they don't just live in that kind of environment. I have colonies that I study that live at the base of waterfalls. I have a couple that live just like along mountain creeks, really actually like quite low at about 7,000 feet. I have some that live kind of just on like open forever alpine tundra with no scree at all, kind of like the Mongolian steppe. And yeah, I mean, I have a couple colonies that I study that live just in straight up super regular aspen groves. Yeah, so it's interesting to see the way that they make homes. But to speak about the scree, it's interesting because in all these different places, they find places to live very similar to scree, where like in the aspen grove, they'll live in root systems, or on the riverbank, they'll kind of tunnel through the dirt and like find the rock that's in there. And then they don't do so well when it's like a high water season or a high water year. But they do like find these strange little aspects of the whatever landscape they're in that's very similar to scree.
Cool. Well, that's your biology moment.
I didn't know any of that. Seriously, I thought they were pretty much in scree, and that's about it. So that's very
Yeah, that's where I've looked for them, and they're fun. When I've loved their company when I'm taking a break, because often where I photograph, large ungulates, whether it's caribou or moose or even Dall sheep, sit down and you'll hear a squeak, and then sit there long enough, and there's a Pika, sitting on a rock beside you or running by, and just this little fluff ball. Whoop, there it goes.
Yep. And if you sit long enough, they'll totally come right up to you. I guess it kind of depends on your energy, probably. They don't want to approach you if you're being weird. But...
No, what do you mean? What do you mean? I try to be zen.
Approaching.
Alpine situations are zen. I resist breakdancing until I'm back down by the vehicle.
Totally. Well, they appreciate that. So yeah, I mean, if you ever want to have like a closer encounter, just like sit really still. They don't care if you talk. So you can be chatty or whatever. But yeah, they appreciate the calm.
Yeah. No fast movements. Stay
Totally.
still. Right. Yeah. Yeah, I've had a couple opportunities to photograph them, in Colorado and places, and it's fun. That's what I enjoy about it, is the fact that you can just kind of find where they're kind of running around, kind of slide in there slowly, sit down and just wait, and pretty soon you'll get all kinds of fun photos, and they're just cute. I can't get over how cute they are. Little rock rabbits is what I like. But yeah.
Yep.
They're not your typical. They're not. Are they a rodent? Are they part of the rodent family?
Nope, they're related to hare. They're a legomorphs.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm learning a lot today.
All right. So, quickly, can you give a few just tips? Somebody who's first time, aside from staying still, what they if they wanted to photograph Pika. We covered kind of where to look, but if you were heading out to a spot, what would you look for? And if you found sign of them, what would you do to get great images like yours? Just a few tips.
So I think typically people don't set out to photograph Pika, and that's the first mistake. So you need to actually be I'm going out to do this today, because you want to go early, right? Like with any wild animal, you want to hit it early, like right around sunrise is when they start being really active, which coincides with weasels being really active in Pika habitat. And so you typically then get really active Pika because they're on the lookout or the run. So the other thing is that people always take photos of them being still, and the trick is to kind of know Pika behavior, right? And so when they're being really still, what you're going to look for is just a little bit of movement. They kind of get a little bit antsy before they're going to take off. And so if they start getting a little bit itchy, if they kind of do little juke movements, like they're maybe going to move, they usually don't do that more than 3 times before they actually will take off. And then, of course, if you're using autofocus, prepare you're going to want to be an inch ahead of them before they ever start moving. And so it's just because they're so fast, you always want to be ahead of them. And so the more time that you can just observe them without photographing them, the more luck you're going to have photographing them, because you can kind of see the nature of how they move. And of course, that's always the advantage, is just knowing actually how your subject moves so that you can stay on top of that.
It always comes back to getting to know your subject, right, and their behaviors, and that's how you can predict and get the shots that you're looking for. It really does. It doesn't matter what the species is, really.
Yep, totally. And because they're a little bit more complicated than I think a lot of people think that they are, there actually are a lot of behaviors to learn that can create beautiful photos that are kind of unexpected for this kind of small animal. So yeah, I really recommend just really getting to know them. Go up to wherever you want to shoot them without plans to do much photography a time or two, and it's amazing what you'll notice.
What are your favorite behaviors to capture?
Sleeping. I think that's like one of the most special things you can see any animal do. But with Pika specifically, they will take naps under the talus, but in places where the sun hits under the talus. And so you can, the more time you spend around them, the more you can kind of study the talus fields to see these places that are open but a little bit hidden, but the sun hits them. And so I love photographing Pika taking naps. And sometimes, like during baby season, I can see like multiple babies taking naps together. And it's just like, it tells me I'm doing a good job because they feel comfortable enough to be sleeping in my presence. I know you've had guests on who have talked about that, like with elk and deer, and how it's just like this beautiful moment. And I feel like that with Pika a lot of the time. And then the other thing, of course, that's really fun is when there is a weasel going after them and you kind of see like their capabilities as they evade this very scary, very comparatively like large predator. They're really athletic, so that's really fun to always be in the middle of.
Well, weasels are very effective hunters. So,
Yes,
you know,
yes. They're scary.
yeah.
For a Pika. Yes.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
sure.
I would have expected that they'd always sleep in the safety of their crevices and they wouldn't expose themselves that way. So that's cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And speaking of zen while in the alpine and stuff, I mean, I've been known to get so zen up there that I'll sleep too.
Yep. Yep. It's a good time. I feel like people who are like comfortable in the high elevation alpine zones were like very odd. And like it's like a different feeling up there where it's like, no, like this is home. Like I don't
Yeah.
care what's going on. Like the weather's brutal, whatever. Like this is home. It's fine. So
Mhm.
yeah, there's nothing better than the alpine, nothing better than being up on tundra.
Yeah.
Even
Yeah.
if you naps on the tundra, on the alpine, it's
All the
very
time.
enjoyable.
It's so
Yes.
soft in some spots. You just lay down. It's
Yep.
like a mattress. The air is so fresh. The natural aromas coming out of the tundra around you are just, I don't know, they're therapeutic to me.
Totally.
They're inviting. Yeah, with caribou, we do that a lot. And just on a long hike, we watch the caribou. If they happen to lay down for a few hours, that's a great opportunity to nap. And yeah,
Yep.
feel it. Can I give you? I have to do this. I want to give you a quick shout out as a conservation photographer, but I have questions about things other than Pikas as well as fun, capital as fun as they are. Would I want to just quickly, as your conservation photography efforts are on your website, I saw it, and it's quite moving, and that you care enough to make a difference in these fashions. And one is trash packed out from your trips and backcountry trips, and you have packed out over 6,200 pounds of trash. I mean, that's awesome, and that makes a difference. And my wife has when we do stuff on the tundra, there are times we fill garbage bags of stuff that just washes ashore, and that, right?
Yep.
It's a good thing to give back that way and help, because animals do get into it. You know, we've had caribou
totally.
picking up plastic things and chewing on them, and you don't want a caribou calf to swallow that. You know, they have enough challenges. So the fact that you've carried out over 6,000 pounds, it's incredible. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think just on that, I think so many people get really hung up on how do I be a conservation photographer? What does that mean? Like, what does that look like? And it doesn't mean that you have to like be published by these huge outlets. It doesn't mean that you have to have these giant projects. It doesn't mean you have to go on expeditions or travel around. But there are so many ways to help conservation efforts, to help local conservation efforts. And packing out trash is one of those ways, while you're out there getting your shots. It's so simple to do. There's a lot of different ways to be a conservation photographer. That's one of the ways that I am. And it's such a simple way. It's an effective way. And I think that it's really, people don't really seem to put a lot of focus on like immediately helping now, not just telling the stories and like the long term, what's going to happen, but like we can make a difference like right now in conservation. And a really cool thing with packing out trash is that it inspires people to do the same. If somebody sees you doing it, most people that are in nature love nature. And so when they see somebody packing out trash, they're going to be like, oh man, like, why haven't I done that? Like, why am I out here all the time and I don't pack out trash? So it's really contagious. So yeah, if anyone's looking to get into conservation, it's such a simple way to go about that.
The garbage bags fit in your camera pack with no weight and take up no room. Something that my guests on trips that come with me, I pick up stuff all the time, and I plant this seed of thought, picking up even the smallest tin can and throwing it in the pack. It's for karma. I do it for karma, for planet Earth karma. If I pick this stuff up, and I know it's a little superstitious in a sense, but good things will come. There'll be a wonderful encounter tomorrow or this evening, or something magical will happen with the light. We're building karma too. So I like to share that thought with people that come along, because it, again, like you're saying, it encourages them to do it. And it feels great when you take that big garbage bag and drop it in the bin at the end of the day when that happens. So it's an effort, but yeah, and again, just 6,000 plus pounds is substantial. So that's awesome.
I heard a story, and it's not directly related to the outdoors, but it's something we can definitely compare to the outdoors. And I'm going to probably, if you've everybody's probably heard this, but I won't get it right, so just bear with me. But the gist of it is the point. It's a guy in a bathroom in an airport or something, and the guy's, washing his hands or something, and he gets done washing his hands, and he kind of starts cleaning the counter a little bit. And the guy behind him is like, "Why are you doing that? They have a guy here that, cleans the counters." And he's like, "Because I've always been taught to leave everywhere I go just a little bit better than I found it." It's just like that attitude. You just take that with you into the backcountry or wherever you are. If all of us, imagine if we all were that way, right? If we all had that attitude, we wouldn't have to pick up 6,000 pounds of trash, right? So just food for thought. But
Totally. It's important stuff. And I'm happy that we get to talk about it, because, it's just so simple. And it's really, no matter who you are, no matter what you've got going on, it's something that we can all do.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And guaranteed you'll feel better for it too.
Yep.
So another thing, I'm wondering how you accomplished this wonderful success story of $20,000 raised for wildlife and land conservation. So just as a role model, how did you do that?
So I have self-published 3 books. One is about my field notes on the American Pika. One is about 2 years that I spent tracking a herd of mountain goats through the San Juans. And then the other is about kind of my healing journey in the American Southwest after some of those near-death things and stuff that I had touched on. And I don't make money from those. I self-publish them and I fund them through like crowdfunding, but all of the money goes back to conservation. I don't make a penny from those. And then also I put on workshops that benefit my community. I have donated lots of prints to silent auctions. I have done a lot of clinics, man, so many clinics just on photography. And it's kind of pay what you can model for whoever wants to come so that nobody feels pressure, but those who have a little bit deeper pockets can pick up that slack if they want, and they usually want to. So it's always local. It's always not begging people for money, not making people feel bad, but it's using the skills that I have and the stories that I have to say, hey, I don't need this money as much as the planet needs this money or research needs this money, and just giving back what I can. And I think so many people do this. The difference is that I write it all down and try to keep track of it all. But yeah, again, it's just something really actionable that I feel like so many people can do.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And just give a direct link from your Instagram. There's links to your website, and there is a Patreon link there too, where people can give to the conservation causes. So can you give us a couple of examples of where the money went, just so if people are thinking of supporting you that way, where it would be applied?
Absolutely. So one of my very favorite local nonprofits is the San Juan Mountains Association, and they also support PikaNet, which is like the biggest Pika field research thing that's happening right now across the West. That does a lot of citizen science for people, and it even trains you how to go out in the field and work with Pikas. But I have been able to give back a lot to them. Um, I have been able to give back to Western Resource Advocates, I think is what they're called. Sorry if I'm getting that wrong. That might not be their name, but also Mountain Studies Institute. They are based up in Silverton here in the San Juans, and they're doing just insane research when it comes to really important things in the Alpine. And then on kind of a not so conservation, but still conservation note, I really like to give back to our local search and rescues, just because the work that they do is so selfless and it's so important. And most of the people that are on SAR teams are conservation workers in some capacity. And so really like any outdoor or nature-based organization here in the San Juans, they get both of my thumbs up and a lot of my support. And my patrons have definitely, if I can shout them out for a second, they've made so much of this possible because they alleviate a lot of pressure on what I need to pay for in my life so that I can give back in bigger ways to these organizations that are doing way, way bigger things than I could ever do in my whole entire life.
Awesome. Well, that's special. It's good to be grounded and connected that way, and admire you for it. On an adventure note side, can you talk to us about how you embark on backcountry trips and what you like about doing them for your photography work?
Oh man.
In
So
30 seconds.
Yeah.
oh my gosh.
I'm kidding. No, take all the time you
No,
want.
that's 90% of my photos are created on expeditions. Um, I don't I sometimes I'll post a photo and be like, oh, everyone's gonna hate this because the light's not right. But the light's not right because the light wasn't right and I was on an expedition, and that's reality sometimes. So I like how I express myself through photography and always have. I feel the same about my expeditions and backcountry trips. It's a form of expression, and I don't really know how to explain that more than that. I feel like even living really rural like I do, even living so much with nature like I do, I can't be fully myself unless I'm in the wilderness, and I'm taking care of myself and no one else is taking care of me. And so, man, it's just like everything to me to be out in the wilderness. And so usually I'm packing a 70-pound pack I bring, I bring my big, huge telephoto. I bring my wide angle. I bring my macro. I bring 3 or 4 camera bodies. I'm hauling it all in, and I'm not going ultralight. Uh, I'm not taking it easy, and I'm trying to access places that I know no one else is going to be, so that I can be by myself. Because I feel like when you get to be by yourself in these super rugged places, you see wildlife behaviors that nobody else is going to see. You see weather events that so few people see. Um, and you gain this appreciation for being alive, because it gets really hard. A lot of times when I'm packing a lot of weight of gear, I'm foregoing food because of that, because that's for me, like, what throws it over the edge is like, oh, like, this 5 pounds of food, like, this is too much, I'll just deal with it. And so, like, you are kind of forcing yourself to suffer a little bit, but you know that it's going to be worth it in the end. It's that type 2 fun. Um, and I think it makes me a better person. And through becoming a better person, it makes me a better photographer. And if it doesn't make me a better photographer, it makes me a more honest photographer. Um, at the end of the day, I think that my photography is very honest, because it just is what it is. And I'm never gonna go out intentionally seeking light. I'm just, like, already there. And so it's either going to happen or it's not. But no matter what, this place is beautiful and these animals are epic. And so, like, light be damned, like, it's just going to be what it is. And there's, like, a freedom in that. And I feel like the freedom allows me to create different things and try different things. And sometimes it's the worst, but sometimes it's really good. Um, I try to remain, like, with a childish spirit, and I feel like backpacking really allows me to do that. It, like, lets me be curious, and it lets me be humble. And so, yeah, that's, like, the short answer. I absolutely live for it. There's nothing else I ever want to be doing than being immersed in the wilderness fully.
I think that's poetic.
If anybody follows you, they already know that. I mean, that you do these adventures quite often, and it's it's always impressed me. That's something I really appreciate about your photography. So, and saying
Yeah.
that it makes you a more honest photographer, that really kind of hit me.
Thank you.
I like that statement. I think I'm gonna simmer on that for a while, because I think there's a lot of depth there. But
Yeah, thank you. It's kind of over the years, it's been one of my insecurities, because I mean, this is my career, and I am going up against people who can afford these big, gigantic trips with guides to find the light and this and that. And I know that some of my photos are not, like, technically as strong as some of these other photos, but I feel like at the end of the day, they are so honest, and they're like, has to be something said for that. That has to be worth something in the end. And as I've gotten older, I've gotten good with that. But that's just kind of my stance on myself as a photographer, is just, none of it matters. It's just, it is what it is.
Love it. It's such a message for life, and I'm hanging on to the staying childish and humble too. To keep that perspective. I mean, I boil it down to not sweating the small stuff, and that's such a simplistic way to think of things. But go beyond that. Be childish. Be curious. Be humble. I mean, and what better place than in the wilderness, where there's so much infinite to explore. And
Yeah.
your images are fantastic.
they are.
And they do hold up. And a couple that moved me on your Instagram, I loved the Aurora Borealis with the cactus. That was
Thank you.
I mean, I'm wondering, how often does that happen? Because you're not at the Arctic Circle, right? You're in the San Juan Mountains. Or was that
Oh,
Arizona?
that was Arizona. That was
Right.
a crazy time. So that doesn't happen.
Right.
That doesn't happen. So I was actually on a 4-month backpacking trip in the Sonoran Desert. And
Whoa. Cool.
yeah, so
4 months.
I was
Yeah.
doing this thing. I wanted to study biodiversity there. And so the way that I do that is immersing myself. And so I got an alert on my phone. There's a lot more service in Arizona than there is where I live. And so it was like, oh, like I'm getting an alert. And it was the Aurora alert. And I was just like, oh, there's no way. Like that cannot be. But I was at a higher elevation on one of the Sky Islands. And I was just like, oh, I need to like absolutely haul it down to the valley floor where the saguaros are. Um, and I did. And 2 nights in a row, we had the aurora, and it was stunning. I've only ever seen it one other time, and it was here in my yard, in Southwest Colorado. And then I saw it in the Sonoran Desert 2 nights in a row, and it was just so unreal. It felt like I was in like, if you know the like old 90s artist Lisa Frank, I felt like I was in like a Lisa Frank painting or something. It was just like, this can't be. You can see it with the naked eye. I mean, it was just like the craziest thing. It was absolutely spectacular.
Well,
Well,
you took advantage of it and captured some cool stuff.
and you were there, right? You're right there doing it. You're living it, so it happened for you.
Yep.
That's wonderful. Wow. Yeah. Another image that I loved was the Gila monster coming
Oh, yeah.
straight at you. Your perspective is just phenomenal on it.
Yeah, so that was cool. That was like, I don't have very many photos of me as a little kid, but I have one photo of me where I am wearing a shirt with like all the different reptiles and bugs on it. And one is the Gila monster. And I was just like always obsessed. And so when I was on this 4-month backpacking trip, I was like, that is my number one creature to see. And everyone told me when I was doing the research ahead of time that they're super rare to see, that you don't just see them, they're not around. So the day I was having was like a 15-mile day with my big 60-pound pack. And I saw something moving in front of me, and I was just like, there's no way, there's no way, there's no way. And it was a Gila monster, and it was coming right towards me. And so with my big backpack, I just dropped to my tummy on the ground and just like, I mean, that's why us photographers have the muscle memory that we do, because you just snap into it. And it was just like a perfect moment. Couldn't have been better.
Ah, so yeah, even better. The image is fantastic. The story complements it so well. So just because I'm enthralled with this, is there somewhere, and if I apologize if I missed it, is there somewhere where you summarize or have published aspects of this 4-month backcountry adventure? Because it sounds epic. It sounds amazing.
So I don't do a very good job of it actually, but if you go to my website under the projects tab, you'll see Sky Islands, a study of biodiversity, and it's linked in there, my Sky Island Traverse blog.
Okay, I'm going there.
Yeah.
It'll just because of the time of night, it will be read tomorrow. I can't wait to
Absolutely.
learn more about this, and then I'll want to podcast all over again.
Yeah.
So many more questions will come to mind. So another subject that I know you wanted to bring up, Jason, was the gear that Deirdre and her husband have going on that you used in Svalbard.
Yeah. Yeah. They were kind enough to give Ron and I a sample of their product, and we took it with us to Svalbard, intending to, try it out and see how it works. And I'll let you correct me on this, but it's kind of intended for phones. But it can be used for about anything, right? We used
Yep.
it for our phones, and we used it for batteries. We used it for whatever, and it came in very handy, and it's a very effective product. When you're in those cold temperatures, right? The cold can eat your batteries pretty quickly. So a lot of times we do as photographers, right? We'll put them in our phones inside of our coats next to our body to try to keep them warm, or the batteries the same thing. But we just used this product and it was great. It didn't matter where we had it. It could be in an outside pocket or wherever. It didn't matter. It kept the product warm, insulated from the cold, and helped with the life of the batteries significantly. So it's cold case gear, correct?
Yep,
And
that's
I'd
right.
love to hear the story about how this product came to be, because it's a cool product, and anybody that's going to do any kind of Arctic or cold weather adventures, you definitely could use this product for your photography gear or your phone for whatever. So, anyways.
Yeah, so cold case gear is kind of like the brainchild of me and my husband when we first started dating. We were both huge winter explorers and backpackers up in northern Minnesota. And so that's, if people don't know, that's where like polar expedition training happens. Like it gets on the Great Lakes just like absolutely brutal. And that's where we did all of our winter camping and backpacking. And so, obviously, all of our electronics would just immediately die on the first night. And so, with my kind of background working in mountain sports and adventure sports, I have always had a foot in the outdoor industry. And so I know some materials that they had, and my husband's much better with this kind of stuff, but he sourced something called aerogel. And he was just like, we need to use this to make something to protect your camera batteries, because there's a way to capture all of this like what you want for full expeditions without having to bring some kind of heat source. There's a way to do it with air. And so he started prototyping almost right away and just came up with these aerogel pouches that you just puff a little bit of hot air into them and they will basically insulate indefinitely. And they're an ultralight product. They don't weigh really anything. They float if you drop them in the water or whatever. But yeah, it was like the most romantic thing that my husband has done, where he invented a whole product just for me. And it does really work. I've done so many expeditions where it's barely getting above 0 degrees Fahrenheit. And I have camera batteries working the whole entire time. An application that I really like them for is like the battery bricks. And so you could do like a whole overnight time lapse, a night lapse or whatever, and not worry about your system dying like during the middle of it. So it's just a really nice product that works like surprisingly well and doesn't weigh anything.
Very simple product, but it has a lot of benefits. You named them all, but yeah, I love how simple it is and how lightweight it is, and the fact that it
Yeah.
floats and all those other things is just kind of a side effect of it. But yeah, very effective, very effective. So we appreciate you guys letting us try that out, and anybody that's interested in it, we'll link it through the podcast and everything as well, and on the website and everything, so that folks can find that product if they're interested. But
Thank you.
And just tell us now too, where, if they want more information or we're looking to, what's the website for that?
So that is just coldcasegear.com. And then we also sell on Amazon. I know that for a lot of people, Amazon is just so much more simple. So yeah, otherwise, I mean, I'm probably, to be quite honest, we're such a small company. Like, I've been kicking around the idea of just adding them also to my website, just because it's such an easy thing to do. And they're just like in our shipping container, just down our driveway. So might just do that.
Awesome. I look forward to researching that more as well. I have a winter trip coming up, and that would be very practical. I have so many questions. Can we? We're an hour and 10 minutes, which is kind of.
I know, but we haven't even listened to any of her adventures at all. I mean, we haven't.
Right?
Yeah.
When I pivoted to the cold case gear, I was like, wait a minute. Once I started talking about it, it's like, stop, Mark. There's more about this 4-month trip to talk about. And now you're talking about winter expeditions up in northern Minnesota. That's cool. Tips, pro tips, hacks, survival instinct tips, common sense. What about all that?
Yeah, it's a lot. This has been a crazy life. When I decided that I was gonna like just do my own thing and throw caution to the wind a little bit, I mean, life just kind of became real crazy.
in a good way.
Yeah, totally. Totally. I mean, I feel, and I say it all the time. And I mean, if you follow my Instagram stories, you'll see that I say it all the time. I feel like I've lived 100 lifetimes worth. I could die tomorrow and I'd be the happiest person in the whole entire world about it. Like, this has been crazy. I can't believe it. I can't believe that this is my life. So yeah, like I try to do it all because it's all worth doing.
Well, I think we need to have you on again and just talk about some of your adventures. I'd love to get into more of like the details of your Costa Rica trip. Just some of the details of, like Mark said, your 4-month long pack trip in the desert. I'm sure there's some crazy stories and some cool adventures. And I mean, I want to know, like, you've been out so much in the outdoors and places where most people don't go. Have you seen Bigfoot yet? I mean, there's lots to talk about. So.
I hoped you would have brought it up by now. Oh, who
Those
knew?
are the secret things.
Right.
Yeah. It's. I think doing a podcast in like the end of November when it's transitioning to winter about your winter expeditions would be very timely and cool.
That would be super cool.
If you'd be
I'd love
willing
to do that. Definitely. I do love talking about my trips, and that's why I share them the way that I do. Because I know that I have some of these trips that are like these grand adventures and things, but I also like fully understand that grand adventure looks so different for every single person, and we can all have these grand adventures and they all look a little bit different, but they're all worthy and they're all as valuable for everybody. They're just important to have. So I'd love to talk more about them.
Cool.
Yeah, definitely that's the case. But I think it's one thing I love about podcasting is sharing these stories, and the passion behind them is there are a lot of people who can't get out and just love hearing about those first person experiences, whether it's physical limitations, whether their life is just too busy with work and family, or who knows, that this keeps an interest alive, keeps it, and a connection to this wild planet that isn't always available. So thank you for sharing some of your super positive and motivational thoughts and stories today. It's been very moving. So thank you.
Thank you guys for having me on. This has been I feel like a long time coming. We've talked for so long, and I mean, I've been a big fan of both of these shows that you guys have done, and yeah, the pleasure is all mine.
It's shared.
I feel like a better person getting to know you a little bit better. So,
thank you.
Yeah, it keeps the interest going. I mean, that's all these years of podcasting. There have been guests that were like, I am, grateful to have that connection and to have met them and to know them, and just for that. And this is one of those. So thank you. And I'm thinking with the Dirtbag Diaries with Fitz Cahall, the host, have you thought about it? Your backpacking story, the 4 months, that's right up their alley.
It's one of those things, and it's like, it's the same thing with like telling the stories on my website. I'm so busy doing it that I sometimes don't stop to think about how to better share everything. And that's why I self-publish these books, so that I can like spew it all out, get it out of me. But yeah, I think the Dirtbag Diaries like might be a good thing in the future for sure.
It would be,
because I do love it.
Yeah, you're a perfect fit, but I get it. I mean, there's so many things that one can do with the time we have. But it's an idea, because I would look forward to that episode as much as I've enjoyed our episode big time. That would also be fun to listen to as well. And yeah, if you'll share that story with us someday, if the time permits, that's in more detail. That's wonderful as well. But for today, thank you. It's been delightful and on all levels, and wish you the best in future adventures, and we'll be following along with a lot of interest.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you, Deirdre. That's a wrap for another episode of Beyond the Wild podcast. We'd like to thank our sponsors, Pictureline.com, your online source for everything photography, and Canon USA. Follow us on Instagram at Beyond the Wild Podcast, and make sure to check out our website at beyondthewildpodcast.com for additional show notes, information, and photographs for all of our episodes. You can watch our podcast on YouTube, where we'll include video and photo content, and subscribe. We welcome your comments, questions, and feedback on all of our social media platforms. We hope that you enjoyed this episode of Beyond the Wild Podcast. Until next time, embrace adventure in the great outdoors with a camera in hand.